بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. نعم. أما بعد. So tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to start the book, Important Lessons for Every Muslim. And this is actually the Sharh Durus al-Muhammad I'amat al-Ummah. This is the translation here by Sheikh Abdul Razak Al-Abbad, the explanation by Sheikh Abdul Razak. The book itself is by Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah. Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah. And the actual book is thin. It's a real thin book. Without the explanation, it's a small size book. Real short, straight to the point. The actual metin. That's it. Yeah. That's English right there. Yeah, let me say it. Just to show you, because you need to see the difference. This is the book, right? With no explanation. And the typing is kind of big too. MashaAllah. Right? 48 pages to show you the difference between a metin, which is a text. So, not in real life, but this would be what you would memorize, right? This is the explanation of the book. 372 pages. The explanation, which is a light explanation, really. It's not a real detail long, but this is the book that would be memorized in those terms, in the talaba in terms. You say you memorize the metin. Just memorize the text. Don't memorize the explanation, because there's a bunch of different explanations. Syid. First, we're going to mention a quick benefit that has to do with one of the reasons we're starting with important lessons. And it goes back to the path or the way that you go about learning. Minhaj al-Talab. The path, the way that you go about learning. Because anybody can pick up books and start reading and gather information from here and information from here and information from here. You just got a bunch of information, right? And a lot of times, if that's done, it doesn't gel, right? There's a bunch of holes in the information because it's a specific way that you're supposed to study and learn. There's certain things, certain information, and certain subjects that you should start with first, and then when you've done that subject, you move to the next one, and to the next one, and to the next one. It's called tadarruj. And this is just a reminder of the benefit of that exactly. And this is by Sheikh Salih al-Sheikh, Hafidahullah. And this comes under a lesson, a class he did called Al-Aham Fal-Muhim. Some things are important, and there's some things that are more important. Everybody with me? Meaning the things that are important are on different levels. Everything is not on the same level. It doesn't mean all of these things are not important, but some things are more important than others. Clear? Priority. Some things take priority and some things take a front seat, and then other things have to come second and third and fourth and fifth, like that. So yeah. And this is what the lecture is on that he gave. And just this section, he says, from the things that are muhim and fatabul ilm, that when you're learning, he says, learning, number one, learning is important. To seek knowledge and know your religion and know your deen and know how to worship Allah and know who Allah is, right, is important. He says, لكن أهم من ذلك أن تطلب العلم على التدرج. But what's more important than that, than just learning, is that you learn in stages. All right. He says you take one issue at a time. It might sound simple, but part of our problem, a lot of us have an issue of, number one, time-wise, that things take time. We want every answer in one class. We want to learn everything in one sitting. I was there today, and we try to get everything all at once. But that's not how you learn, as they say. They call it Syid. That's not how you build yourself a strong foundation for your Islamic knowledge, that you just grab here and there, you're reading all over the place. Not that you can't read, but there's a specific way. Saajid, he says that it's a must, and that a person moves from one level to the next. You take the easy stuff first. You take the easy stuff first that you might already learned it. It might be familiar to you, but you master that first, and then you go to the issues that have a little more difficulty in them, that need more explanation, right? He says, and then he mentions the statement of Ibn Shihab that he always mentions. قال Abu Shihab al-Zuhri, Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, rahimahullah. The famous statement that he said, من رام علم الجملة ذهب عنه الجملة لكن يطلب العلم ولكن يطلب العلم على مر أيام والليالي. Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, rahimahullah, he said that whoever tries to learn everything in one sitting, that they're going to lose it. It's going to leave you in one sitting. You can't get everything tonight, not here in one night. You learn everything, you leave out, khalas, you don't need to sit and learn no more classes, right? No matter if you sat here 1 hour or 10 hours, everything doesn't come in one class, in one jalsa. He says, but learning happens over the passing days and nights, months, years. That's why it's impossible that a person that understands this, right, belittles any type of Islamic knowledge, if you understand this, right? Some people, for example, because the flyer says, back to the basics. So some people consider themselves above this. They consider themselves above the basics, but that ain't for me. That must be like a new Shahada class, so that's for new Muslims, right? There's no knowledge that should be belittled like that, right? But at the same time, every class has a level, and it's possible that there is a level class that is not your level. It's possible. In our case, the majority of us, this is our level. Because as you're going to see, it's information in this book. And the name of the book is Important Lessons, Li'amat al-Ummah, for the entire Ummah. So, and as he said in the introduction, he made it, Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah, he wrote the book for the general Muslim, not for the student that's going overseas to study or the Sheikh. He wrote it for the general, as we say, the everyday Muslim, right? So the information in this book is not specific for a specific group of people. You got to know this. You're supposed to know this first. You need pre-information before you can come to this class. It's for the general Muslim. So this information, the general Muslim walking around should know this. Tayyib. He says, so if you are a person, and that's why I wanted to show you that book, the Metin. If you're a person trying to learn, he says the first thing is that you should start with Al-Inaya bil-Mutun. You start with these small books like that. We got this thing, we think here, some of us think that the bigger the book, right? If I can read this whole book, the stronger I'm going to be, which is not necessarily true. This book might have more information, but if you read a bunch of information and only 10% sticks, and the other person reads a lot less than you and 90% sticks, then who came out? You understand? It's not about how thick the book is or the sheikh, the name of the person on the front of the book. Like, because this sheikh wrote it and I'm reading his book, I'm going to come out stronger than everybody else who didn't read this book. It doesn't go like that. But yeah, he says that you start with the smaller books, right? And then he says, ثُمَّ تَتَدَرَّجْ, and you move up in stages. There's no rush. There's no rush. That's why, honestly, talab al-ilm, meaning leaving the country and going to sit overseas or wherever a person goes, is not for everybody. Everybody can't hack it because it takes, for real, it takes sabr, it takes patience. You're sitting with the sheikh and he won't give you everything because he know you're not ready for it, but you think you're ready for it. I need it right now, sheikh. Can't do that tonight. Right? And you got to keep doing that for years and years and years and years and years. And some people, they get tired. They had enough. They can't do anymore. And then they stop where Allah decrees for them to stop. So yeah, he says, if a person doesn't do this, if a person doesn't start with the smaller books and the smaller issues first, and they jump to the bigger issues, the issues that need more detail. And I'm going to use this for example, right? The small book, the metin that he has, let's just call that's the actual book itself. A person skips that, and not this is an example, and they go to a book that looks like this. But this book, for example, has a lot of debate in it. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of this opinion, that opinion, right? They skip that and they go right here. He said a person that does that type of thing, meaning you don't go in the proper order that's needed. If a person does that, he says, هذا إخلال بالتدرج. This is a mistake in the path and taking the steps. It's a mistake. There's no problem, y'all, starting with the basics. If you go anywhere you're going to go to study, they're going to start you tell them where you at, and they're going to tell you where you are. You could tell them, oh, I already memorized such and such surah. I finished juz amma. Right? I already finished that juz. I'm here. You're going to say, you finished it? Yeah, let me hear it. Start from An-Nas. Read Al-Fatiha. You can have 10 juz. Read Al-Fatiha. I read from An-Nas. Since you have those juz already, you already memorized it. Like, read from An-Nas to An-Naba. Read the juz from memory, not you got it, right? You already have it. That's what you come, you say, oh, I already got that. Like, read from An-Nas to An-Naba from heaven. No book. And if you have it, that means you don't need the Mus'haf to know what surah comes next. An-Nas, what's after Nas? You know how we do. All right, you on a roll, you know, like 4 straight. You say, what's the next one? All right. If you have it, like we say, right? One time I did a class on Al-Fatiha, how to recite Al-Fatiha, the correct recitation of Al-Fatiha. Brother walked up and said, what class y'all on? I said, how to recite Al-Fatiha. He said, oh no, I got that, y'all. Cool. Rolled out. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, no problem. I mean, it's not. But realistically, me knowing my people, most of us have a lot of problems in how we recite Al-Fatiha. It's no shame. It's part of learning. So he said to skip the small basic things and go to the larger issues, this is a mistake. He says, and this prevents a person al-wusul ila mabtaghat fil ilm. It prevents you from reaching the level of knowledge that you try to reach because you skipped over you didn't take the proper steps. And this is from Sheikh Salih Ali Sheikh's book. He says, this is why you find لهذا تجد كثيرا من طلاب العلم في هذا الوقت تجد أنهم يقرؤون كثيرا. You'll find a person, y'all. You know how we say people, he or she is well read, right? They read a lot. They got a lot of information. And we assume, because they got a lot of information, that they understand what they're reading. And that we assume that they're able to put the puzzle together. It's an assumption, right? He said you find a lot of readers, to level M students, that they read a lot. He says, وَلَا يُحَصِّلُونَ كَثِيرًا, but they don't gather a bunch of ilm. The knowledge is not there like that. It's just information. Meaning, you can read a lot and not know when to apply it and when not to apply it, right? You can read a hadith from Sahih al-Bukhari. It's authentic, but you don't know, the person doesn't understand, does this hadith take place here? Can I use this hadith here or no? Does this ayah fit my situation or not? right? That takes a little more. It doesn't just take reading. It takes a little more than just reading. Like he says, as long as you're reading, though, as long as a person's reading, you're gonna get some benefit. It's not like the issue is don't read, there's no benefit. No, no, no. As long as you're reading, you're gonna get some benefit. But you need to make sure you're reading what you should be reading. You're reading your level. What level am I on as a Muslim? What level of understanding do I have? And then we should start there. It says a person is going to benefit as long as they're reading. It says, لكن ما أسسوا العلم على أصوله. But they haven't built the foundation of Islamic information and understanding is not going to be solid like that. Because they started on what? Where they start? They start on the wrong level. They skipped the first two steps and jumped on the third step. Instead of walking the first step, the second step, and the third step, they skipped the first two and just jumped to the third. It says, and lastly, he says that this is a fight, that this is a principle to live by, that knowledge is to be sought, and then seeking knowledge, he says, and the talab al-ilm muhim, walakin at-tadarruj fi talabihi aham. Coming to learn is important, going to classes is important, but at-tadarruj, the right level, and progressing in the right level is important than just going and sitting in any class. You with me? And this happens a lot, y'all. It happens a lot. Not just here. It happens a lot overseas with the tulab. A lot of times we would sit in classes based on the person teaching. The sheikh is teaching. Sitting with sheikh, it's the sheikh, right? But the sheikh is teaching a book that you don't understand. It's not even on your level. You way out of sync. And you sit there, they say, as they say, are you sitting with the sheikh? You sit there, you might sit there with the sheikh for 3 months and don't get anything. And it's not necessarily the sheikh's fault. That's not your level. That's not a class that fits your level. You might need to go with a sheikh that's not as well known as he is. All right, since this sheikh is the well-known sheikh, everybody, you gotta sit with him. But what if I'm not on that level to understand? I'm talking about don't even understand the words coming out of his mouth, literally. My Arabic is not even strong enough to understand what he's saying. So all I understand is like, Hada, MashaAllah, Allah, Muhammad Rasul, I get the bare minimum. And then I leave and I say, yeah, just came to sit with Sheikh Fulan. Giving it up. All right? You got to be sincere. If that's not your level class, you got to be strong enough to say, you know what? That's out of my league. I'm going to Sheikh such and such class. I'm there. That's where I'm at today, right now. And there's no shame. There's no shame in that. And that's from the benefits of going through Ad-Durus al-Muhimma, this book, Important Lessons for Every Muslim, or it's translated on that cover, Essential Lessons. Sayyid, Sheikh ibn Baz, rahimahullah, he said in his introduction, after praising Allah Jalla wa Ala and sending salam ala Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says, أما بعد فهذه الكلمات موجزة في بيان بعض ما يجب أن يعرفها العامة عن دين الإسلام. He said this book, and he uses these words, and it's important to understand because, again, every class is not made to be a detailed debating back and forth. That's a certain level. He said, I made this book. These are short words that I put together to clarify and explain what is obligatory for the general Muslim to know from his or her religion. This is not like a level student of knowledge. You have to go sit. You got to know Arabic, right? The Muslims walking around should know this. You're going to see if you stick around long enough, if Allah gives a person tawfiq to be able to stay in class, because that's another level in also. The largest class, y'all, not just here, with the ulama, the scholars, the largest class is always the first class. Majority of the people come to the first class. And then it takes what? This ain't got nothing to do with y'all personally. It takes patience, dedication. You can't do other things because you got to go to class on this day at this time. So that means you got to put stuff aside for that. On average, in the Haram in Mecca, On average, a book might take a sheikh from front to back. It might take him on average, if he's doing that book 1 day a week, it might take him 2 years to finish that one book. He's teaching every day. He's teaching 5 to 7 days a week. So he's doing 5 to 7 books he's teaching at one time. You might say, well, I'm going to go to this class on Thursday night. That Thursday night class from Maghrib to Isha, you have to be prepared for your Thursday nights between Maghrib and Isha to be busy for the next 2 years in order to finish the book from front to back with the sheikh. That's what you have to be prepared for. And that's just one class. That's just one class. That's not the rest that comes along with it. So he says this book is built, and he wrote it for those short, to the point, he says, for the general Muslim. He says, then, as he says here, لَيْسَ فِيهَا طُولٌ مُمِلٌ وَلَا اخْتِصَارٌ مُخِلٌ. It's not too long and it's not too short. This is how he wrote the book, and this is how the explanation fits how Sheikh bin Baz wrote the book. طيب. And he says it covers everything from the wajibat, the deen, the obligatory things from the religion, things that are obligatory. He says, وَلَا سِيَّمَا مَا لَا يُعْذَرُ الْمَرْءُ بِجَهْلِهِ. Also the things that a person is not excused. There's no excuse. Some of the issues in this book is no excuse for a person, for a Muslim not to know. Not everything in the book. There's some issues in this book. You don't get an excuse if you don't know. Meaning there's no excuse for not knowing. And he'll get to those issues. He says, in some issues, التي هي من المستحبات وليست من الفرائض. Some issues in here are recommended. Stuff you should do. To be a better Muslim, you should do this. If you don't do it, it's no sin. But to be a better, stronger in your deen, you should do these things. طيب. He says, لكنها من الأمور المهمة التي ينبغي على عامة الأمة أن يعلو بها. These, the whole book in general, are things that every Muslim, he says the Ummah, every Muslim should know these issues. And we're going to see, y'all, some issues in here that they might seem a little, I don't know, I don't want to say that. طيب. He starts off, lastly, he says here, this is these issues that أهمية مما يحتاج إليها عوام المسلمين. Again, the book is written for the regular Muslim, the awam, the general Muslim, meaning he's not a sheikh, he's not an imam, he's not a student of knowledge, just a regular Muslim. I'll go to work, take care of my family, worship Allah, do my obligatory, and that's it. That's what the information is for. طيب, the first lesson, Adams al-Awwal, is actually the Tisar al-Surah, which is from Surah al-Fatiha to, Surah al-Fatiha, then from Az-Zalzalat al-Nas. But we're going to start with Ad-Dars al-Thani, Arkan al-Islam. We're going to start with the second lesson, which is Arkan al-Islam. Everybody with me? Arkan al-Islam, the pillars of Islam, the second lesson, which is on page 54 in the translation. The translation is on page 54 in this book, if you have this one, the thick one. It's on page 54. Questions clear? طيب. قال رحمه الله الدرس الثاني أركان الإسلام بيان أركان الإسلام الخمسة وأولها وأعظمها شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله بشرح معانيها مع بيان شروط لا إله إلا الله ومعناها لا إله نافيا جميع ما يعبد من دون الله إلا الله مثبتا العبادة لله وحده لا شريك له. طيب. The first thing we start from, as he says, the second lesson, he says, clarifying the 5 pillars. So a person says, we all know the 5 pillars, right? He says the most important, the first pillar, and the most important pillar is what? The Shahada. The Shahada. The statement, Shahadatu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah. طيب. Sheikh Abdul Razak, Hafidh Allah, Sheikh Abdul Razak Al-Abbad teaches in the Prophet's masjid in Medina. Masjid al-Nabawi, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He teaches there, and his father teaches there also. The father and the son both teach in the Prophet's masjid. Allah. His explanation, he says, Al-Islam lahu arkan la yaqumu illa alayha. Islam has pillars. The deen cannot be established. A person, there is no deen without these 5 pillars. Clear? There is no Muslim in the world, y'all, not just in Philly. There's no Muslim in the world, a Muslim, that doesn't believe in the 5 pillars. Right? Clear? Tayyib. Now we got to be clear on what a pillar is, a rukn. And they don't do this. They do this so that we understand, what are we talking about? A pillar. Why are the 5 pillars so important? A rukn. He says, هو جانب الشيء الأقوى الذي لا يقوم شيء إلا عليه. It is the strongest part of something. The strongest part of a structure that if that pillar is not there, the structure can't stand. Everybody clear? A pillar, the strongest portion of something. If that pillar is not there, it can't stand. It's going to fold. It's going to crumble. Clear? So we got pillars of Islam. If these things are not in place, a person's deen is going to be what? Weak. It's going to crumble, shatter. And that's why you see some of us are stronger than others. Right? Some of us are stronger. Some of the Muslims are stronger Muslims than others. That's why we see the variety of Islam in our city. Even with the large number of Muslims we have. Right? The large number of Muslims we have, the quality of Islam and from person to person is going to vary based on their iman and their strength and these pillars. Tayyib. Everybody clear? It's important to understand what a pillar is. I'm not trying to be funny, y'all. Sometimes we hear words and we don't think about what they really mean, or some of us might not really know what they mean in English. You might say, it's like this. No, it's not like that. We want to be specific of what we're talking about so that it all makes sense. If I'm not making sense, y'all got to stop me, y'all. If it don't make sense, don't let me just, stop. All right? So the pillar is something that is a part of something, and is what else? Is a part of something? Huh? Structure. What else, son? It's not just a part of something. It's the strongest part of it. That's important. The strongest part of something that if it's not there, then the rest of it can't stand. Clear? So the 5 pillars are the strongest of the religion. And then inside the pillars, some are stronger than others. Clear? Tayyib. He says, Islam huwa al-istislamu lillahi tabarak wa ta'ala bit-tawheed. Islam, the meaning of Islam is what? What does Islam mean? That's not a trick question. What is the meaning of Islam? Huh? Peace. Jade. Peace. Submission or surrendering to Allah. Tayyib. To worship Allah only. To submit. Jade. They good. Islam. Go ahead. To make your worship only for Allah. Tayyib. It's some meanings. Sometimes you see like T-shirts or whatever, posts or whatever it is. It says Islam means this, right? And it may not necessarily be the meaning of Islam, but it may be something that Islam promotes. Islam encourages peace, right? But does Islam mean peace? Not necessarily. But Islam encourages peace, right? Islam encourages a lot of things. We learned a lot of things from Islam that encourages peace, to have honor, to have dignity, to be truthful, all that kind of stuff. The meaning of Islam is more closer to submission. Submission to who? Submission to Allah, the Creator. How does a person submit to Allah? The most important thing that a person can do is show their submission to Allah. Huh? The salah. Huh? The Shahada. Tawheed. Shahada, Tawheed. The most important thing, the highest form of submission to Allah is that a person practices a Tawheed. A person lives their life worshiping only Allah. That all of their worship is for Allah. Right? And it doesn't mean that the salah is not important, and it doesn't mean that salah doesn't show submission. It doesn't mean that. But what is the greatest form? Because a person could be making a salah, as we know the salah, all of the actions, and they could be praying in that their salah is not for Allah. Right? It's possible. A riyah, showing off, as the Prophet said, a person stands there, they pray, they do all stuff, but they praying like that, and part of that is for something other than Allah. Somebody's watching them, right? They're looking for some type of compliment. It's possible. So a person's understanding and practice of that only all worship is for Allah is first. That's first and foremost. Tayyib. And he's going to get into the details of that. Tayyib. It's a question, y'all. How do we know as Muslims? How do we know as Muslims? Number one, how many pillars is it in Islam? Huh? 5 pillars. How do we know that? That's what we taught. Who taught us that? Where did he teach us that? Huh? Listen, I'm asking the question. Don't ask me. How do we know it's 5 pillars? From the Sunnah. Like, what do we have from the Sunnah to prove that it's 5 pillars? So. For the purpose of teaching the Prophet, right? The teaching of the strict organization, then what we're saying. The Hadith of Jibril. In the Hadith of Jibril, the Prophet, he came and he asked the Prophet, what is Islam? And what did he say? Islam and tashhada and la ilaha illallah. Did the Prophet mention anything about these things being pillars? No. Where do you get the nerve, Muslim? Where do you get this? Islam is 5 pillars. Who said that? You with me? What's the dalil? I gotta translate it. What's the dalil on that? What's the haq on that? What's your proof? That is 5 pillars. It's important. This ain't a trick question. It's important though. The way we approach Islam is important. It's important. Y'all already know it, but you know. There you are. The hadith. It is a hadith. It's in the Sunnah, but what is it? This ain't to pick on you, Sheikh. It's not enough, y'all. You shouldn't be said it's in the Sunnah. Oh, all right, cool. What is it in? Where's in the what part? Where's the Sunnah? Where can I find it? Right? Everybody knows Islam has 5 pillars. Right? Because that's what we've been taught. But where that come from? Sheikh's, it's in the Sunnah. Sunnah is vast and large. Sahih Bukhari by itself is 8 books of Sunnah. By itself. Imam Ahmed, his Musnad in Arabic is 40 volumes. Where in the Sunnah can I find that Islam got 5 pillars? You with me? The Hadith, Buni al-Islamu ala khamsin. Islam is built on 5. Islam is built on 5. The Prophet ﷺ used the number 5. Everybody clear? Tayyib. He says in the Hadith of Umar, the Prophet ﷺ saw the Hadith Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. We all know Ibn Umar. Who doesn't know Ibn Umar? Well, everybody knows Ibn Umar. Come on, we ain't doing this, y'all. Huh? Ibn Umar, we need to know, because there's the thing. If one person don't know y'all, more than likely somebody else don't know. The son of Umar ibn al-Khattab. Tayyib. Who is Umar ibn al-Khattab? Who is he? Huh? He's one of the 4 caliphs. Tayyib. I ain't, it's not trying to be. What is a khalifa? A leader of the Muslims. A leader. A khalifa is a leader. So Islam has, as he said Omar is one of the 4 khalifas. 4 rightly guided khalifas. Tayyib. There's 4 of them. Tayyib. But what is a khalifa though? He says a leader of the Muslims. That's not enough for Tayyib. A person who came after the death of the Prophet ﷺ to lead the Muslims during different times, coming after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. Tayyib. Now you looking like, you know, that's enough for you or no? That ain't enough? Tayyib, add on. Yes. Meaning before the Prophet ﷺ died, they were just companions. After the Prophet ﷺ died, not all of the companions were considered leaders of the Muslim world. There's certain Sahaba, companions of the Prophet ﷺ, that were in position, they were leaders of the Muslim world. Meaning, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ was the leader of the Muslim world. When it's time to pray, who leads the Salat? The Prophet ﷺ, unless he designates somebody else to lead it. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. A designated imam, the masjid has an imam. The masjid has a designated imam. Never mind, we do when we get there. The Prophet ﷺ led the salah, unless he designates somebody else to lead. Like after the Prophet ﷺ died, ﷺ, right? Now, who's the leader of the Muslims? In charge of the Muslim world, right? This is the Khalifa. And the first Khalifa after the Prophet ﷺ was who? Abu Bakr, that's Siddiq, radiallahu anhu. He took over. When Abu Bakr died, radiallahu anhu, who was the second Khalifa? Umar ibn al-Khattab. Now we're talking about not Umar. This hadith is not about Umar. This is about Umar's son, Ibn Umar. And what is his real name? Abdullah. Abdullah ibn Umar. Okay? Now this is the $1 million question. But it's not gambling, y'all. The difference between gambling and giveaways. Not real $1 million. This is the big one. What was Abdullah ibn Umar known for? What was he famous for? Yeah, you are. Ibn Umar, radiallahu anhu, he was known for he would try to walk and put his foot in the same footprint that the Prophet ﷺ walked when he was in Medina. So if he saw the footprint, that's how serious he was about following the sunnah. You know, we still leave everything, right? He would try to do everything that the Messenger ﷺ did, Ibn Umar, radiallahu anhu. He's a companion, and his father is a companion. Ibn Umar is a Sahaba, and his father, Umar is also a Sahaba. Like Ibn Umar was known for trying to follow as much of the sunnah of the Messenger ﷺ as he could. So they said he would even try to put his foot in the footprint where the Prophet ﷺ walked. So this hadith about Islam having 5 pillars is narrated by Abdullah, the son of Umar ibn al-Khattab. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الإسلام بني على 5. That Islam is built on 5. And then he told us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those 5 things that Islam is built on. So a person says, well, y'all got 5 pillars. Well, how? Who said y'all got 5 pillars? There's nothing from our religion. It's just, as we say, from the hip, min jabik, or from your pocket, as they say. So the min jabik from English. Right? We have a hadith. Our Prophet ﷺ, he taught us that Islam is built on five pillars. He says, the Prophet ﷺ says, Shahadati an la ilaha illallah wa iqam as-salat wa ita az-zakat wa siyam Ramadan wa hajj al-bayt. So these are, and that's the end of the hadith, and the hadith is in Sahih Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim, the hadith. So these are the five pillars that the religion cannot stand except that these five pillars are there. Everybody with me? Tayyib, question. Everybody heard the hadith? Islam is built on five. The Shahada, that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah. Establishing the Salat. Paying the Zakat, right? Fasting Ramadan and making Hajj. The details will come later. Tayyib. Out of those five pillars, which one is the most important? Because they're all important because they're pillars and the deen can't stand without all five of them. But which pillar is the most important? The Shahada or the Salah? The Shahada. That's right. Like the Shahada. Now the next question is, how you know that? What proves? No Shahada, no Salat without Shahada, no Islam without Shahada. Tayyib. Where you get that from? You with me?
Yeah, I got you. For the hadith, in Islam, the hadith became an order, and the same order that the hadith came in, which was first, second, third, Jumar, house, go.
Jay, good. How you know it's important? The most important. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned the Shahada first in the hadith. He said Islam is built on five. Good. And then he said the first thing he said, Shahadatu an la ilaha illallah. The ulama says this proves that that's the most important because he mentioned it first. And then he said, establish the Salah. Tayyib. And that's why they say A'zamu, the greatest pillar of the five is the Shahada. How do we know that? The Prophet ﷺ mentioned it first in this hadith. And they say that this is a proof to show that this is the most important. So the Shahadatain, not just the Shahada, the Shahadatain are the most important. The Shahada, and it's also called the Shahadatain. When we say the Shahada, when a person becomes Muslim, they say Ashhadu. Ashhadu, which comes from the Shahada. Right? Sheen, Ha, Dal. But we say that word twice. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. So we say the word twice, and that's why they call it Shahadatain. We say Shahadatain. We say it twice, Shahadatan or Shahadatain. It says, فَشَهَادَتَانْ لِلَّهِ بِوَحْدَانِيَّةٍ وَلِنَبِيِّهِ صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ بِالرِّسَالَةِ هُمَا أَعْظَمُ أَرْكَانِ الْإِسْلَامِ. The Shahada that none should be worshipped, none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, is the Shahada. And we also make the Shahada that the Prophet ﷺ came with the message. Right? These are the greatest of those five. Like if they consider one, they're the greatest of those five. Now he goes into the statement, La ilaha illallah. He says, Wa la ilaha illallah hiya a'zamul kalimat ala al-itlaq. The greatest thing that a person can say out of their mouth is the statement, La ilaha illallah. Clear? The greatest thing a person can say, the greatest statement to be said out of a person's mouth is La ilaha illallah, which shows the level and how serious the Shahada is. Right? Allah forgive us, some of us have belittled the weightiness of the Shahada, how heavy it is. We don't know how heavy the word is. That it makes, this is what separates Iman from Kufr, belief from disbelief. The Shahada, not what block you're from, what part of the neighborhood you're from, how much, whatever you have, whatever your reputation is, none of that. What makes us brothers and sisters is Iman, the Shahada, that we believe that none has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is messenger of Allah. That's what makes us Muslims, and that's what makes us brothers and sisters in Islam. The statement alone, no matter where you're from. He says that this is the greatest statement that a person can say. He says, well, here, afdal al-dhikr. And this is the greatest thing that you can say to remember Allah. The greatest thing of dhikr, right? You know, after the salah, we sit and we say what? SubhanAllah, SubhanAllah, SubhanAllah. Everybody sits there and make their dhikr, whatever they say. It says the greatest form of dhikr is to say the shahada. How do we know that? How do we know that saying La ilaha illallah is the best thing and the greatest form of dhikr? Huh? How do we know that? Here you go. From the Sunnah. Which Sunnah? What book you in? Is that, yeah, you with me? I'm doing that intentionally so we get away from accepting anything from anybody. Because I'm teaching, you're supposed to believe everything I say. Everything I say is 100% correct because I'm here on the mic. I can make a mistake. I'm not perfect. I can make a mistake. And any other person can make a mistake. Nobody's perfect. So the question is, how do we know that that's the best dhikr? Shaykh Abdul Razak, hafidhahullah, this is his statement. وَهِيَ أَفْضَلُ الذِّكْرِ. He says, because he teaches in the Prophet's masjid, everything he says is 100% correct. Because his father and their ulama, that they don't make, it's not possible they make a mistake. So how do we know? What gives him the authority and audacity to say that this is the best dhikr? All of those forms of dhikr that we have in the books, he says that this is the best one. Based on what? You with me? I'm not expecting the answer. I'm just setting you up to, you with me? He says, يَقُولُ نَبِيُّنَا. Our Prophet ﷺ said, this is how we know it's the best dhikr. How? Because our Prophet ﷺ, he told us it's the best dhikr. Not because of the shaykh and this imam and this one. And the brother had told me, all right? I had heard one time. I can't remember where I read it. Not because of that. It's the best dhikr. La ilaha illallah is the best dhikr because our Prophet ﷺ said, afdalu dhikr. The greatest form of dhikr, la ilaha illallah. Allah Akbar. Islam is easy. Afdalu dhikr, la ilaha illallah. Tayyib. The hadith is in Imam al-Tirmidhi's book in Ibn Majah. An Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu anhu. Imam al-Albani rahimahullah, he said the hadith is Hasan. طيب. The Prophet ﷺ also said, خير الدعاء دعاء عرفة, يوم عرفة. The Prophet ﷺ also said, the best dua you can make is the dua that a person makes on the day of Arafat. We all know the day of Arafat? Huh? Brothers, raise your hand if you don't know what the day of Arafat is. Don't be shy. If no hands go up, that means everybody knows what the day of Arafat is. So, huh? No, I'm not gonna point at nobody. All I'm gonna say is this. When everybody get up, y'all, don't let nobody come to you and ask you what's the day of Arafat on the side. Listen, y'all, if one, y'all gotta say nothing, but if one person don't know what it is, be sure there's another brother in here that don't know. All right. The day of Arafat is that day that we fasted last week. Remember when all the Muslims was rushing to fast Thursday, before the day before their Eid? That was the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, which means all of the people making Hajj were all on Mount Arafat together, making dua from Dhuhr to Maghrib. All of the people that were making Hajj were on Mount Arafat. The people who weren't making Hajj, the Muslims around the world didn't make Hajj. They were doing what? Fasting, right? So the Prophet ﷺ said the best dua on that day, Yom Arafat. He said, khayru dua, the best dua is to make dua on Yom Arafat. He said, wa khayru ma qultu ana wa nabiyyun min qabli. And the best dua that I have made in the prophets before me, he says, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. That there's none worthy of worship except Allah. And he is the only one, he has no partners, and he is the only one to be worshipped. Clear? Showing the level and how high the statement that we call Shahada. He got Shahada, she got Shahada. Right? we say it like that. But according to the Prophet, ﷺ, it's the best dhikr. The best way to remember Allah is the shahada. Clear? طيب. He says the shahada, the statement, none has the right to be worshipped except Allah. He says this is, as they say, he is zubdatu da'wat al-mursaleen. This is like the core, the most important part of the message that the messengers came with is this right here. This is the most important part. The messengers that came before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The most important part is this statement, the shahada. And why? Why? Because of what it means. What does the statement La ilaha illallah? A person can't be a Muslim except that they take shahada. We all know that, right? You can't be a Muslim. So what happens when a person wants to become a Muslim? A lot of people, which is a misconception, a lot of people think they have to come to a specific masjid. They got to go to the masjid to become a Muslim. You don't have to go to a masjid. You have to pronounce the shahada. You could be in the street, home, in somebody, your friend's house. The most important thing is the pronunciation and the belief of the shahada.
No.
Hold on. From the shape.
So when was the second part added to it?
What's the second part? Ah, mashallah.
So we're speaking on like a law. That's different. So we know the shot at second part. So what Muhammad Islam did, he was it. I know he. Who was it added on? Or what added on? Revelations.
Everybody hear the question? He said, when was the second shahada added on? And the Muhammad Rasulullah, which is good. It's a good question because the hadith that Shaykh Abdul Razak mentioned did not say, it said, I'll read it again. It says Islam is built on 5. Shahadati and la ilaha illallah. It didn't say, wa Muhammad Rasulullah. It says, wa iqam as-salah. Establish the prayer. Itaz zakat. Pay the charity, the poor charity. Fast in Ramadan and Hajj. Where is the second shahada? That's a good question. Everybody get it? The second shahada is in the other narration. There's more than one narration. One is in Bukhari and one is Muslim. The wording he uses here, and it's in the footnotes. Let me see if it's in the English part. So if we mention it in English. I hope so. All right. No. Okay, it's not mentioned in the English translation. But as it says here, it says أخرجه البخاري. Where can you find a hadith? It's in Sahih Bukhari. ومسلم. It's also in Sahih Muslim. وَاللَّفْظُ لَهُ. This wording of the hadith is from Sahih Muslim. But if you go to Sahih Bukhari, you'll find the other word with the shahada of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Okay? Clear? Everybody with me? Meaning, this is one hadith. In this hadith, it doesn't say, وَأَنَّ مُحَمَّدَ Rasulullah. But in the other authentic hadith, it does say that. طيب? طيب. So, he says the most important, or the crux of the da'wah of the messengers, the most important thing that we tell a person about, the most important thing that Allah sent messengers with. Forget us. Allah sent messengers with a message. The most important part of that message, and as he says here, وَأَوَّلُ كَلِمًا يَسْمَعُهَا أَقْوَامُهُ مِنْهُمْ. And the first thing that when the messengers went to their people, the first thing they told them about, y'all, again, is important. It's not that things are not important, but some things are more important than other things. Everybody clear? We go to a person, yo, you gotta be a Muslim, man. You gotta stop doing this, that. All right? We don't start with what's the most important thing? The shahada, the belief, understanding that none should be worshipped, all worship should be for Allah, the creator, the one who created you. Right? Sometimes we skip that and we start going to issues that they're important. But as you said, Shaykh, there is no salat without the shahada. So the first thing we got to start with is what Allah sent the messengers with. First, what did they start with? He said the first thing they started with, and the first thing that they spoke to their people with, as Allah says in Surah Al-A'raf, Surah Al-A'raf, Ayah 59, Surah Al-A'raf, Ayah 59, U'budullaha ma lakum min ilahin ghayruhu. Worship Allah, worship Allah. You have no Lord worthy of worship except besides Allah. There's no other deity, there's no other God, Lord, anything else that should be worshipped, that has the right, that is worthy of worship besides Allah Jalla wa'ala. And at this point, he gets into the meaning of La ilaha illallah. Alhamdulillah, he makes it simple. What time is it now? We stop it there. We stop it there, man. He makes it simple. Everybody with me? Pay attention, y'all. It's real. This makes the explanation of the Shahada easy, inshallah. Easy to understand. Because you got to understand, Islam, when the Prophet ﷺ came, which is a part of understanding the seerah, his life, his biography, and understanding the people of his time. Many people who followed the Prophet ﷺ were who? Does anybody know? They were all majority. I mean, they weren't Muslim at all, but who? Yeah, but they were all mushriks. From the people, all of these people he's talking to, a lot of the people that came to him were what type of people? Poor. From the lower grade of the society. All right? Which means, but you got to understand, everybody understood, and he's going to get to that. The people he was talking to, they understood the message. It wasn't like you had to be a certain level of education to understand what the Prophet ﷺ was saying. Clear? Everybody understood it. The ones who became Muslim understood it, and the ones who heard and didn't become Muslim, they didn't accept Shahada, they also understood what he was saying, but they didn't accept. Clear? It's not like you had to be a certain level of knowledge in order to understand what the Shahada means. Everybody with me? Saajid. He says, the meaning of the Shahada, La ilaha illallah. He said, as Shaykh bin Baz said, Nafiyan jami'a ma yu'badu min dunillah, illallah muthbitan al-ibada wahdahu. Saajid. He said, it holds two parts. The Shahada has a two-part or two portions to it. All right? One portion is a nafi. I want to see how it's translated. Because I want y'all to get, I want to make sure, I'm not trying to be funny, I'm serious. Sometimes it's possible to read a word in English and you don't know what the word really means in English. All right, it says here, as for the meaning of non words from the law, it says, nothing has the right to be worshipped is the negation for everything worshipped besides Allah. The negation for everything to be worshipped besides Allah. So my question to you is, what does the word negation mean? Negation. To discredit or go against. Okay. Anybody else? The English says, if you go buy the book and you go home and read it, it's going to say the negation. Now, the assumption is you can just keep reading, or you can say, well, what's the negation? What does that mean? In simple terms. Subtraction? Nah. Make it simple. Not necessarily. Huh? To discredit? That's what he said. All right, what's discredit? Make it, this is what I'm saying, y'all. Make it simple. You talking to a person to downplay it, to reject, or abandon. That might get a little foggy. Reject is good. I'm going to bring it all the way down. Huh? Reject is probably the closest so far, but bring it all the way down. To negate something is to say no to something. Say no. To negate, no, I'm not taking that. Right? Bring it, make it super simple. You have to negate something in the Shahada. Shahada has two portions. You have to say no to something. You have to negate something. It says negation. You have to say no to something. In the other portion, the other part says to affirm. What is affirm? Jay, to agree with something. So you have to say no to something, and you have to say yes to something in the Shahada. Everybody with me? Sayyid. There is no Shahada except, as he says, La tawheeda lillahi tabaraka wa ta'ala illa bihima. Except with a nafi and an ithbat. The Shahada is not complete unless you, one, say no to something, and two, you say yes to something. Clear? The statement. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. The Shahada that we know. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. It doesn't stand except that it has two parts. You have to say no to one thing, you have to say yes to something else. Clear? It's called the nafi and ithbat. The negation and affirmation, it says in the book. Negation, to say no, to reject it. The affirmation, to say yes or to agree with it. Tayyib, and I think that's the adhan. So we probably should stop on this point. It says, La ilaha illallah. He says this, you're saying no. And this is important, y'all. When you say no, you're saying no to everything. Y'all with me? It's important for the Shahada. Nafyu am li kulli ma yurba min dunillah. It's a general denial or rejection of everything to be worshipped. La ilaha. That's why in Arabic, we know a fetha. Who knows a fetha? Fetha, kasra, dhamma. All right. It says la ilaha. It doesn't say la ilahu or la ilahi. It says la ilaha for a reason. That's a homework for that. If you know Arabic, go find out why. Tayyib. And we're going to start with this. The negation, the la ilaha, is to say, no, we don't worship what? Anything. It's a rejection of everything. La ilaha. The second part is the agreeing. We agree, we accept, we say yes. And what's that? Illallah. The whole shahada is based on those two. La ilaha. There is no, that's why it says there is nothing that deserves to be worshipped. That's for everything. When we say yes, what we're saying yes to, we're not saying yes to everything that we worship. We're saying yes to what? Specific. Allah. La ilaha illallah. So when we say no to everything. And when we say yes to the worship of Allah only. Clear? Huh? If it's not clear, let me know. We got to stop for the adhan. Clear? Any questions before we stop? Because we got to stop there for Maghrib. Inshallah. Khalas? So we'll stop there. If y'all want to get the book, this is the book. The explanation that I'm reading from. And we'll stop there, inshallah. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.